As Nick said, the presentation is going to be a little bit different from typical machine learning talk. We're going to be discussing different ways of using machine learning and other data-driven techniques with art in the context of Netflix as well as other similar companies. And I think I'll try to give you a little bit of flavor of the creative process that goes into creating art, and then talk about how we can use machine learning to improve upon it and have a better product. Netflix's movie recommendation system is well known. We basically have this matrix structure with rows and columns. The rows are representing groups of movies. For example, goofy comedies or dramas or My List or Trending Now. And each row has several movies in it, which we kind of refer to as columns. So the Netflix movie recommendation problem is basically to order the movies within that matrix, sort the rows as well as sort the columns. So it's basically like a two-dimensional feed, like Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever, but think about it as a two-dimensional rather than one-dimensional system. The recommendation system uses log data to learn user preferences, and it builds the page in a way that takes into account both typical recommendation system information, like matching a movie to a user, but also accounts for diversity. We are using a variety of algorithms, including the algorithms listed here. And we've been working on this for a long time, and it's extremely important problem for Netflix. We believe, I think, the company values it, the value of this recommendation system at over $1 billion. But when we look at the matrix here of movies, we see that that's not the whole story. It's not even, I would argue, the majority of the story, because what matters as much as deciding the entries in this matrix is actually creating the page with attractive assets, images, movies, UX that will cause the user to experience the product in an interactive way more effectively. Assets, when I say assets, what I mean is creative entities that are used to represent movies. For example, stylized title is an asset. It's like a logo. Or images that we use to represent the movies on the page or on the Netflix app. Video trailers, promotional videos, and so on. Assets play a huge role in the user's interactive discovery process. And thus far, asset creation and selection has been a manual process done by designers. And I believe it's about to be disrupted in a major way by machine learning. We're seeing some very promising results at Netflix. We're very excited about that. But I believe there is a lot of change coming on in the pipeline in the future, both at Netflix and other companies, should they decide to use it. So let's see some assets related to House of Cards. This would be the stylized title, and this is in English, but we have other countries as well, so we're going to have to create an asset like that for other languages. We have this kind of large cinematic billboard to represent the title on a large display. We have a lot of images used to represent every different episode in every different season of the show. We have the billboard on top when you go to the Netflix page or on the TV. And also, if you look on the side of the billboard on the top left, there's the metadata, the description, the genre, actors, and so on. That's also an asset. It's very important to use it in the right way. This icon right there, that's the image we use for continue watching selection, and just blow it up, and you see the design quality here is pretty good. It's attractive. It gives you an impression. It makes you want to click on the movie, maybe not, depending on what you like, but we'll get back to that later. Here is another example, a show called Fuller House. And these are different assets put on the same screen. We have horizontal images, we have vertical images, we have the stylized titles. We also have motion asset right there at the top left. And we have, by the way, much more assets for Fuller House. This is just a subset. I couldn't display all the assets. We have quite a bit more than what you see here. And the challenge is both to create good assets and to figure out how to use them. And so let's see a little bit about motivation, why we think this is important, why we care about that. What I'm going to show, I'm going to show two motivations. The first motivation is when a user goes to the website and browses for a movie, they will kind of scroll up and down and left and right until they find a movie that they're interested in, and then they'll click on it. That process of browsing the site is done in a way that the user only spends maybe 1 or 2 seconds on each movie or on each image. You have to grab the user's attention in that 1 second or 2 seconds and pull the user into the movie. Make the user want to click on it, get to the title page. In the title page, you also need to attract the user to click play. Of course, again, if that's the right movie for the user, and we'll get to that later. What I want to show next is a short movie, which is taken from a user study. And what you'll see is, as a user browses the page, you'll see the area in focus will move, and that kind of shows where the user's eyes are focused on. And so you see how the user kind of browses left and right, and what it looks like from the user's perspective. So the user is going down a little bit, it's looking at the metadata, now it's going to the right, and then it's going back up and then to the left. But as it's going kind of to the left, this is in focus for a few seconds, and it's going back to the right, again stays for a few seconds. It's not really, you can't really overload the user with a lot of information. You have to present the information in the right way that will facilitate that interactive discovery process. So assets play a big role in facilitating that process. The second motivation is after this initial browsing process where the user clicks on a movie that they're interested in exploring, they get to a movie detail page. The movie detail page is a little bit different. Now we know the user is interested in considering the movie, but they still are not sure. So we have to display to the user assets that will convey the right information, what the movie is about, and pull the user into the movie if it's appropriate. So, for example, maybe this could be an asset that we'll display in the title detail page, a large kind of cinematic, impressive image. So I think both motivations are important. Both how do we facilitate the interactive discovery process where the user only has 1 or 2 seconds to look at each movie, and then the second stage of when the user already is interested in the movie, we want to make sure that they make the right decision and they get to experience the right content for them. So let's review now how assets are made and the history a little bit of assets at Netflix, and then we'll get to how we use machine learning here, and then a little bit vision towards the future at the end. So in the early days, the assets on Netflix's homepage were basically taken from the DVD boxes. So movies were sold in DVD boxes, and on the box there was some sort of an image that was designed by the studio that produced the video, and we call this back of box, or Bob. And here's an example of what it looks like. Along the way, we found out that sometimes horizontal images work better than verticals. And there are several challenges that we were facing. The first challenge is how to improve the quality of these images in case they're not necessarily good. Maybe they're good for a box of DVD, but they're not good to display on the screen. And then if we figure out horizontals work better, how do we do that? We have to kind of take the asset and convert it to a horizontal image. Here's an example of doing that for a movie called Transcendence. So we start with a vertical, we manipulate it, designers are working on it, they focus, they kind of patch it up nicely, add some design elements, and we have a nice horizontal image. The second part of creating a nice stylized image often starts from what we call an in-stream still, which is just an image taken from the movie. So here's an example of an image taken from the movie The Sixth Sense. And what we'll see next is a short movie showing how a designer works with that image and converts it into a stylized, polished, horizontal asset that we'll use to represent the movie. Right, so if we compare the before and after, you see the image on the left looks like a snapshot out of the movie. The image from the right looks like impressive, polished asset. I'll show you a few more examples. Here's another example. We take this image from a movie called Last Tango in Halifax, and we polish it up, creating a stylized asset. Here's another example from a movie called Killing Season. This is the in-stream still. And here's the process of how we create a stylized asset from it. Again, the before and after. In some cases, we create the stylized assets from more than one still, from two stills or more. Let's see how this is done. Here is an example of a movie called Dragon Heart. So we take two stills from it, and we create an asset from both of them, combining them and adding some design element so that it looks nice and impressive. And one more example, in which we actually used multiple stills, I think about 10 stills or so, to create one asset that kind of represents what the title is about. So this is, the movie is called Staten Island Summer. So we start with a few images. These are the images. And we create an asset combining elements from the different images, and this is better than each of the individual images. Like if you think you want an asset to represent that movie, you can use each of these individual images by itself, or you can combine them as we did on the left, on the right, and notice how it kind of gives you a feeling what the movie is about. You look at the picture and you kind of know. You may not like it, you may like it, but at least you know what you're getting. And if this is your genre, you'll be attracted to that and you'll say, cool, that's what I was looking for. Just look at it for 1 second and, okay, I want to watch that. And one of the reasons I'm showing these examples is think about in your mind, how can machine learning help? We have here combining the first task is picking a good in-stream still to represent the asset. The second problem is adding some stylized elements, using some design to make it look nicer, maybe combine multiple stills. All of these are tasks that right now primarily are done manually, but I believe we have a lot of disruption coming because of new techniques in machine vision and deep learning and so on. We can be much more effective, do this semi-automatically and more effectively. So let's see a little bit of machine learning. How can we optimize the asset using explore exploit? When I say asset optimization, I'm referring to the task of figuring out when to use which assets. And so we have an explore-exploit process, where in the explore process, random assets are presented to users while monitoring the probability of success. The probability of success, you can define it in many ways, but the way it's defined here is the number of users who stream and saw the image divided by the number of users who saw the image. So it's a little bit like condition on the fact that you got the asset, what's the probability that you actually streamed the movie. The exploit process focuses on exposing users to better performing assets. And we can think of it in two different approaches. The first approach we call discrete explore-exploit, which is very simple. Basically, you have only two stages. You have an explore stage and an exploit stage. In the explore stage, you're going to look at, you're going to expose multiple assets and look at the probability of success. And then once you have enough data, you move to the exploit process where you show the best performing image. Or you can take the approach on the right, continuous explore-exploit, using a standard technique like UCB or Thompson sampling to kind of trade off explore for exploit, try to be a little bit more optimal about it. At Netflix, we found this to be a big driver for user engagement. We see a lift in streaming hours. I think the motivations I was showing you were supposed to convince you of that, but I think this is also showing itself to be very helpful based on metrics and numbers and so on. So here's like a pop quiz. So this is 6 assets from Breaking Bad. Which image do you think would have the highest probability of success? It's too many people here. It's kind of hard to ask to raise hands and so on, but just look at it for a few seconds and then I'll tell you the answer. So okay, so what we found out that the best performing image in terms of probability of success is the image of the caravan, which is kind of counterintuitive. And you can imagine these designers that they work to create these stylized images and the hero and the stylized logo and it's orange and so on, and then some caravan comes and beats all the other images. But that's what beautiful about the data. We want to increase streaming. We want to have users enjoy our product, and if that's what users want, that's what we'll give them. There's also an issue of matching images to device. We have different devices. We support large screen TVs, websites, tablets, phones, game consoles, and not all images or assets would work well on all devices. So for example, you can have this asset for Downton Abbey, very complex, a lot of people there. Could be very successful asset if you display it on a large screen TV in large format. But if you think about a cell phone, that's not necessarily going to be a good asset. There's also an issue of avoiding clickbaits. So how do you define the probability of success? Well, that's based on streaming. You remember the ratio of users that streamed to the users that saw the asset. But what does it mean streamed? Do you look at streamed for 3 minutes or 5 minutes, or do you look for streaming all the way to the end? If you look at too short a time, like a minute or 2 minutes, you're going to catch users that saw the asset and they thought it was interesting to them. They clicked on the movie, but they were misled because the asset was not a good representation of the movie. And so you have to be a little bit careful how to define this probability of success. Another thing that's important is diversity. You don't necessarily know upfront which asset is going to win. And even if you use machine learning models, the machine learning models may fail. So you want to introduce some diversity into the collection of assets that you test so that you kind of make sure you're trying different direction. Maybe you're trying the actors, something that is a little bit like a big stylized title. maybe something up close, something up from far, and so on. And so the next stage after thinking about explore, exploit, to find out the best asset, next stage, most people would imagine it would be personalized asset optimization. So it's quite possible different people would prefer different assets, would react differently to different assets. Here's a few motivations. Maybe if you've watched these 3 movies here at the top, and you're going to be served a representative image for the Quiet American, you'll react better to this image because you watch kind of action movies, and here there's someone with a gun. And if you watch before these movies, which are more romantic movies, maybe you'll react better to this image right here. But again, you have to be careful how to define probability of success and avoid clickbaits. Another example of motivation for this line of thinking. Maybe you have a different preference for cast members. If you've watched before these movies with Uma Thurman, you may react better to this image when we show you Pulp Fiction, whereas if you've watched before movies with John Travolta, maybe you'll react better to this asset. There may also be different preference towards image aesthetics. Maybe you prefer the image on the left or the image on the right, or a different tolerance to violent or sexual imagery. And then there's also the question of where you are. We are now at Netflix serving users in almost all countries except for China, North Korea, and Syria. And different people in different countries react differently to aesthetics, to art, to images. We see here a famous image. I don't know if you've seen this before, but the way it works is the angle basically is a color that represents 2 different emotions, and the row is different countries. And so row 16, I think it's here, that represents death, I think. So you see it's like in the US it's black, and in some other countries it's white, and in some other countries it's green. Kind of symbolism of death, right? So you could expect people from different countries to react differently to different assets based on their culture, where they're from. So you have to think about how to account for that. Here are examples of the best performing images for top sense. For Sense 8 in different countries. This image was the best performing image in Germany. This one is in Brazil. This one in the US. Very different. And you can think of some machine learning techniques that can handle that balance between using the global counts and the local counts. If you have a very small country, you don't want to just use the local model. You want to back off or use smoothing or hierarchical model. Whereas if the country is a large country, you may want to focus more on what you get from that country, the data you get from that country. How do we do personalized modeling if we want to do that? You can think of this probability here, probability model, successful stream upon impression, condition on user history, user feature, and context. You can think of different machine learning models that will let you do that, deep learning, logistic regression, trees, etc. And you have a similar explore-exploit situation to what I described before. So what is the vision towards the future? Where can this go? I think a very important question is what make assets work. We can think of using computer vision and deep learning to kind of extract these features, for example, the color theme, number of subjects, the type of the image, is it a close-up, the focus, image descriptors more broadly, and try to study what makes a difference between a winning image and a losing image, both overall and in different countries, and use that learning to guide the creative process in the right direction, and also add some automation to that. And that will give us, I think, amazing insight into human psychology. Here are some learnings that we found. Emotions are really good trigger to kind of encourage people to engage with the assets. So for example, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, the best performing image is this one. You see on both the actors' faces a very strong kind of emotion that looks like a good thing to want to have in an asset as opposed to someone looking bored. Like that will not make you want to click on it. Another example is this movie. It says nice guys often finish last, so the two best performing images show villains as opposed to the hero, which is that boy here didn't end up performing that well. Basically, it means maybe you're attracted to click on watch the movie because of the character that's in the asset. You could think about production and post-production, which is right now mostly manual process of close-up and zoom, camera focus, scene composition, deleted scenes, and so on. But there's no reason we couldn't semi-automate that in the creation of the movies, not just representing it with assets. And finally, I think the big kind of task is storylines. Can we think of movies that have multiple storylines, and then we find the best storyline to show, maybe different countries, different people, different storylines. This image here is from a show called Kong. It's a show that we feature, and you can actually display, like this ape here is going to fight with an armband or a jetpack. You can think of kind of using asset optimization to not just represent the titles, but also to create the content itself. And I think that's going to be a huge thing if we get to it, and I think we're making progress in that direction. I want to thank a pretty large team that are working on that, and there's a couple of links there to blog posts if you want more detail, and we are hiring engineers, scientists, if you want to work on that or other exciting stuff at Netflix. Thank you very much.